Hello all, great to be here with you. I'm glad to introduce Mariah Possobom, who's going to discuss cybersecurity for critical infrastructure. And now I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to Mariah.
Okay. Can you see my screen?
Yep. All good.
Okay. So thank you. Hello, everybody. Thank you for the invitation, Zoe. Thank you for you to join this webinar. It's a pleasure to me to share my experience in cybersecurity with you. I'm Mariah Possobom. I'm a cybersecurity expert. Now I'm working in cybersecurity for critical environments. I'd like to talk a little bit about me, about my experiences, and then we will proceed with the presentation. So I'm a half Brazilian and a half Italian. I lived for 28 years in Brazil. I graduated in information technology there in Brazil, and I worked at IBM and AT&T, working with network support and also security compliance activities. Then I decided I had some dreams to fulfill. One of them was live abroad and do a master. And also study about cybercrime. So I decided to plan I decided I would like to realize all these dreams, and I decided to go to Italy to do this master in cybercrime. Also have the experience of live abroad and have some experience in working in another country. As my grandfather was Italian, I had the double citizenship. So I studied at the Sapienza University. And as I finished my master, I started to work in this area of critical infrastructure. Now I'm working at Enel, and I'm also a member of the International Cybersecurity Committee for standards for data communication security. If you want to join me in the LinkedIn, you can find me there. It will be a pleasure to make in contact with you all. I'd like to start this presentation talking about what is a critical infrastructure. And I asked for the company that I work, Enel, to give me the permission, to give me the permission to share some information about Enel, because I think sharing this information, it could be a good example to give you some explanation about what exactly is a critical infrastructure. So Enel is an Italian multinational energy company. It's present in 34 countries. Enel is responsible for distributing 73 million, distribute energy for 73 million of end users. And it means that 73 million of end users need energy to have energy. So you can imagine what happens if a company like Enel have some problem to distribute energy. It means that not the company will have a problem, but all the citizens, all the society, and it could be bad consequences for all the country. And that's what's critical infrastructure. When I have some kind of service or some kind of product that could provide services for all a country, and if I couldn't give this kind of service or of product, I could impact in big scales all the country. Well, here we are talking about an energy company, but critical infrastructure is not just for energy company. It could be for a lot of other kind of services. This is just an example, and I'd like to share this information about energy just to help you to imagine how could be the impact if I have, if I could provide energy for all these kind of people and all these countries. But I also have other sectors that are considered critical infrastructure. It could be, for example, healthcare and public health. For example, hospitals, because if I can't give hospital services for a country or for the society, I have a big problem. I couldn't help people to solve some problems, some health problems. Transportation is also considered a critical infrastructure. For example, communications, for example, water, because if I don't have water, it's not just a problem of the company that distributes and the water, but also for the population, for all the society. So all services that's essential for the functions of a society and also the economy is considered critical infrastructure. Well, now that we know exactly what is a critical infrastructure environment, I'd like to talk a little bit about the network, about the network architecture and the environments. We used to know the IT network, no? The information technology network. And this is the left side photo. That doesn't matter so much. Well, the equipments and where the equipments and the communications are, but what main important is if all the things are working. So if all the network is working well, for me it's okay in a traditional IT network. The important is all the things it's working and it's working well. I'm not care about where are the cables, about where are the devices, about how I put the environment in the working in a working way. When we are talking about critical infrastructure, that it's also known as industrial control system or ICS network. We are talking about as we talked in the last slides, we are talking about necessary services for all the society. So it's important now not just have all the things working, but it's also important to have the things organized to working well, organized and synchronize it, because if I have some kind of problem in the network, as I have all them organized, I can change in real time the device, and I can solve a problem, a communication problem in real time. Because as we know, if I have a critical infrastructure, it's so important for us maintain the availability of the service, because it's a so important service for all the society. So I'd like to give you all this example just to explain the importance to have a synchronized and organized network environment, because it also helps the availability of the environment. If I have some availability problem, if I have to change a device, or if I have some communication problem, it's important to solve it as soon as possible. And availability is not also important, but in the industrial control system, it's the priority, okay? So as we know, we have the information security triad, and in a traditional IT network, in traditional IT environments, the three principles of information security are confidentiality, integrity, availability. When we're talking about industrial control system network, we change a little bit the priorities. I'm not talking about that confidentiality, it's not important, okay? It's also so important, but as I have a critical environment, I have to put availability in the top, okay? So I change a little bit the priorities to maintain the functionalities of all the environment. And this kind of priority is important to when you work specifically within industrial control system network. Another thing that changes a little bit when we are talking about the critical infrastructures is about the protocols. For example, we know in a traditional IT environment, we have the TCP/IP based protocols. We have the OSI models, where we are talking about 7 layers to guarantee a correct communication between two nodes, to guarantee a complete packet construction to communicate, exchange packets in the network. When I'm in a ICS environment, it's important, we talked in the last slides that it's important to me, the availability, and also important to have organization and synchronization. And if it's important to us, the availability, I have to guarantee a good communication. I have to avoid malformed packets, and to do that, if I have less layers in the construction of my packet, I can guarantee better a fast communication, and I can avoid malformed packets. And that's why the most packets and the most protocols that I use in my ICS network environment are specific protocols that's not based in the TCP/IP model, and it's not the same that the protocol that I use in the IT network. Mainly the packets that we use in the ICS environment is a 3-layer reduced model. So I can guarantee a fast communication and I can guarantee the availability. So if I have different protocols, models, if as we see in the last slide, is that if I have different priorities, because availability is a top principle of my information security communication, and organization synchronization. It's also so important for my network environment. I have to work in a topology, in an architecture that I can use to make my device communication in the network and guarantee that our communication is working good. This is the Purdue model, okay? The Purdue model is a standard Purdue that we can find in the standard 62443. It's a specific standard for industrial control system. And if you want to more information, you can find it in the internet. It's a very good standard, specific for critical infrastructure. Talk exactly about that. The Purdue model talk how is the best way to put the two environments in communication in a security way, okay? For example, here the level 4 and the level 5 are the enterprise security zone, and we can call the IT network, okay? The network that we are used to know, we are used to see. With standard protocol based in the TCP/IP models and all that we are used to know about network, okay? Here in this other level, here between the levels, I have a DMZ, okay? An environment that I will protect and segregate the networks, segregate the IT networks for the ICS network. Here I have firewalls, here I have characterized this zone to separate the communication between all the zones, okay? When I started to work with the ICS networks, I have to understand a little bit about the other levels of communication, from the level 0 to the level 3. It means it's a model, okay? It's not necessary. It's not necessary that I have all these 3 levels in all kind of networks. It depends also of the kind of critical environments that I'm working, but it's important to evaluate the situation to understand how many levels I have to implement. In these 3 or 4 levels, depending on the critical infrastructure that I'm working, I have to, I will have all the ICS protocols, all the communications between the ICS network, and here I will have the three layers protocol communicating. Here, it's important to do the segregation. Here, it's important also to monitor the traffic, to understand what is happening in the network, to understand if I have other important things to implement, and to analyze the risk of this network. Because, of course, the main thing that I have to do is secure this area and avoiding kind of attack here, because as a critical infrastructure, if I have a cyber attack in this environment, it will compromise the availability of my service, and it could be very, very big impacts. So when we are talking about network, about availability, and about protocols, we are also talking about cybersecurity. We have to take care of all the implementations that we will do in our ICS environments, and we have to protect all the environments to avoid cybersecurity. Because, for example, if I have a cyber attack in an IT environment, a traditional environment, of course, I will have some damage, but I will have some financial damage and maybe some image damage. We are talking about some customers. We are talking about company, and I'm not saying that's not important, okay? It's always important. It's always important to protect an IT environment. But if I have the same kind of attack, for example, in an ICS environment, I'm not just talking about financial damage or about image damage. I'm talking about, we talked in the last slides that cybersecurity is a necessary service provided for the society. So it means that if I have a cyber attack in an ICS environment, I can have also a reputation image. I can impact all the society, okay? Maybe I can have some lives loss, because we are talking of necessary services. Maybe I'm putting in risk not as the company, not as the client, semi-customers, but maybe I'm putting in risk also the society. And I'd like to share with you some examples of cyber attacks that we faced in last years in in the critical infrastructure environment. It's just to show with you how it could impact all the society, how it's important to take care about the cybersecurity and the network implementations to guarantee security by design, to guarantee a protection, to guarantee measures that will help to protect the ICS environment and avoid cyber attacks in this kind of environments. For example, here, all these informations are public informations, okay? I take all them from Google, so you can also try to Google it and find more details if you are interested in have some more details about this kind of cyber attacks. But the idea here is just show to you all how this kind of cyber attacks in a critical infrastructure environment can affect not just the company, but maybe also us as society, as citizens, and a country, okay? For example, this first one in the top at the right side of the screen talk about a cyber attack that happens in Germany. Okay, it was a cyber attack in a hospital. The systems of the hospital was blocked, and some patients couldn't be the care because all the systems was blocked, and a patient died because it couldn't possible to transfer this patient to another hospital during the cyber attack. So you can imagine it was a hospital that's considered a critical infrastructure, as we see in the beginning of the presentation. It was a system, so an ICS system, industrial control system, and it was attacked by a hacker. This kind of attack was fatal. So maybe a patient died here as a consequence of this kind of cyber attack. This other, the other example that you can see here, it's the Stacey Jacks Twitter. She is a patient and she is sharing with the network, her network, a situation that she couldn't receive blood transfusion because the hospital that he was in was victim of a cyber attack. So another example of cyber attack in healthcare infrastructure. This other one here happened in Ukraine, okay, this in the right side. It was very known cyber attack. I studied that for my thesis of master. It's a cyber attack in a power infrastructure in a company responsible for power distribution in Ukraine. And after the cyber attack, they interrupted the power distribution for more than 24 hours. So it's also difficult to imagine how can we live without energy. Can you imagine more than 24 hours without energy? So it's not impacting just for the company, but for all the country. You can imagine the impact of this kind of cyber attack, no? It's so dangerous. So here, there's other kinds of cyber attack, another energy company cyber attack. This another one in the top is about the flight radar that after a cyber attack could not inform the users about the tracking of the flights. In the Israel here, this one is also so interesting. It was in July of this year, okay, 2020. It was not the first one. It was the third cyber attack in the Israel water management facilities. They changed the percentage of chlorine levels in the water. Can you imagine? Maybe someone could be could be very, very dangerous, And it's so important to take care about this kind of environments, because cyber attack in this environment could be really, really dangerous. This other case here, talking about the metro transport system in San Francisco, happens, I don't remember, 3-4 years ago. Okay, 2016. I remember this case in details because I remember that I studied a lot about this use case. And I remember in particular for this attack, a hacker hacked the ticket machine. So all citizens that need to buy a metro ticket couldn't buy it because the ticket machine was hacked. In this case, I remember that hackers asked for a financial rescue, okay, to correct the stock machine to solve the problem, and the San Francisco government decided to do not pay the financial rescue, because it's also important to do not financiate these kinds of attacks, because you can imagine that if every company pay for these hackers, it is like a motivation for them to continue hacking other environments and asking for other financial rescue. So the best thing to do in this case is not pay the rescue, of course. Of course, that it's difficult, mainly in this case of critical infrastructures, because if I have to guarantee availability, maybe this is the faster solution that I have to put everything working as soon as possible and avoid impacting. But it's also important to do not financiate this kind of cyber attacks, because more I financiate it, more I know that other attacks will happen with other victims. But in this case, I remember that San Francisco government decided to do not financiate the rescue asked for the hackers, and instead of it, they decided to give tickets free, transport free for all the population, as they could solve the problem. So can you imagine also for the government how money they lost giving transport rights for all the population, because the ticket machine was blocked, no? And these are just some examples, just to show you about how it could be dangerous and how it could be bad for our lives, and not for our lives, but for our society. Here we have the last one about the Iran, that Iran hacks US government websites. Warning, this is just the beginning. So all we know that government has a lot of personal information also about the citizens, no? I don't have a lot of details about this kind of hacking situation, but it was just an example to say maybe when we have a hacking involving a critical infrastructure, we have also our personal information involved, because in some cases our personal information is under government responsibility. Sorry. So now we know what is critical infrastructure. Now we know how is structured a network environment or a network architecture from a critical infrastructure. We know about the priorities. We know that availability is so important. We know about the protocols, and we know also how we can be a victim of some cyber attacks. But how can we protect the critical infrastructure environments from cyber attacks? Well, as you could see, it's necessary to have a specific cybersecurity group to taking care about the critical infrastructure, not just in people that works in critical cybersecurity for ICS environments are working not just for a company, but are working to protect also all the society as we work to protect a critical infrastructure. But we use some international standards to guarantee the cybersecurity and the best practice in this kind of environments. Of course, in my opinion, it's not possible to have 100% security in an environment. We always have to decide about the risks, about the things that are most important to put in security, and also considering budget, because sometimes it's not easy to invest in all these kind of measures, but putting all the information together, it's possible to decide which are the priorities, how to evaluate the risks, and choose the best methodologies to put environment in security, okay? So we have OWASP as vulnerability assessment and penetration test standard for cybersecurity. We have ESC for best practices and audit aspects for cybersecurity. For critical infrastructure, specifically, we have the standard ESC 62443. That's so important, but we have also NIST, we have NERC for risk analysis. So we have a lot of best practices, guidelines, and the international standards that help us all to decide which are the best measures to put in place to secure a critical infrastructure, and to decide how to protect better the environment. Of course, for as we see, we have a lot of kinds of critical infrastructure. So for each kind of critical infrastructure environment, I can choose what is more important, most important to me, to the environment. I can decide the priorities for this kind of critical infrastructure environment, and then put in place a project to implement all these measures. But it's not a static implementation. It's important also to say that it's also so dynamic, that today I put the measures in place, and it does not mean that I will be secure for the end of my life. It's a continuous process. We have always to revise it, to review the information, to review made some updates in all these kind of standards to analyze the situation, to see if the priorities change. And that's why it's so important to be always updated in this kind of information. I think it's an overview, a very quick overview about all that means cybersecurity for critical infrastructure. Of course, if you are interested in going deep in this kind of topic, I invite you to search more about this kind of standards. And if I could help you, it will be a pleasure also to stay in contact in LinkedIn. I can help you maybe with some additional information. And I'd like to thank you for your presence, and I hope you like this presentation. Thank you.